Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, depending on where you are. Today is our third edition of UN Career Talks, and I am Esma Gumberidze, co-founder of the network of former UN youth delegates. And this is why I'm speaking to you, and I am speaking to you on behalf of this network. It was established in 2020 in summer as a result of the pandemic, and the vision for it was to uh, continue and prolong usage of the experiences of former UN youth delegates who usually upon the expiration of their mandate had a lot of experience with young people, have met a lot of young people, but somehow were becoming lost for the UN, for the international community, and were getting on their lives, their jobs, studies. So we wanted this experience to stay in the system, and this is why we created this network. And UN Career Talks is one of the initiatives of this network, along with another one, which is Youth in Diplomacy Talks, where we invite UN ambassadors of different countries and also ask them to share their experiences. These series, UN Career Talks, are especially important because, as we noticed, not so many former youth representatives to the UN actually start working for the UN or for foreign services of their countries. Therefore, we want to listen to the experiences of the UN staff, get inspired, and have more information about how to join the UN, what is it like working there, and to somehow get more opportunities to be involved in actual UN processes formally and not only informally. Therefore, today I'm very glad to welcome Wanangwa Rachel Mganga. She's working for the UNFPA. She's gender project management and social development specialist. Wanangwa has served for WHO and UN Secretariat and other UN agencies, and therefore her experience is very diverse and therefore even more interesting. I would ask all the participants of the audience to prepare your questions while she's speaking, and also those who are watching us live, also please write your questions in the comments, and we'll verbalize them and make sure that Wanangwa has an opportunity to answer those questions. Wanangwa, once again, thank you very much for joining us, and floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Esma, and thank you to the network of former youth delegates to the United Nations for organizing this event and for inviting me to be part of this discussion. I'm very excited to be here with you today. So Esma, you've asked me to speak about my background, my personal experience, and how it is exactly that I got to be with the United Nations, which is where I am right now. I'm originally from Malawi, and this is where I did my high school as well as my first degree. So just to give you a little background about Malawi, it's generally a patriarchal society, and the traditional dynamic is mostly that women are in their reproductive roles, whilst men are regarded and groomed to be in their productive roles where decisions are being made. So growing up, I grew up with 4 sisters and one brother. And I always say that, I feel very privileged that my parents invested the same in my sisters and I as they did with my brother, which was not traditionally the case at the time. But as much as I grew up in this family, you don't grow up in that silo. You grow up in a community, in a society. And, growing up in the society, I always really just questioned these social norms, the gender dynamics, to say, why is it really that, there's one gender that is given more opportunities or is allowed more opportunities than others? And it seems that there are more privileges for one gender as opposed to other genders. And this could be in different issues, for example, on access to education. So at this point, I was young. I was very passionate about changing the social norms that I was seeing in my community and the different experiences that I felt young women and girls were facing. But I did not really actually know at that point that I could develop my career in addressing these issues. So my dad was a general in the Malawi Police Service, and my mom was a commissioner also in the Malawi Police Service. So they both had thriving careers of their own, which wasn't the norm at the time for families, because mostly it would be only the man that would be working and the women would have more reproductive roles at home, but which wasn't the case for my family. So it was from them actually that I first heard about the United Nations. I would have discussions with them, and they would always instill it in me that you can make these changes that you want from within our community, but also that there's a step beyond that to say there's a global village which is interconnected, and then some of the issues that we're facing, they are also similar in other areas of the world. So now coming to my first degree, I studied to be an English teacher and I minored in French. So I did languages. And I will tell you right now, this is not what I wanted to study. It is really not how I envisioned my life going. I did not apply to be in the education sector, but that is where I was placed. So just for you to understand what I mean when I say I was placed, the education system in my country is that for you to be able to transition from high school to university, you first of all have to have a Malawi school certificate of education. And this is, we can think of it as an equivalent to a high school diploma. And then beyond that, we write an entrance examination into university. And this could be thought of as a GRE, the Graduate Record Examinations, which is within the United States. So it is from the two scores of these sort of papers or from these certificates where a board now sits down and decides where it is that they think you would be best placed in, depending on your performance. So I was placed in education and I went ahead with it. I was like, okay, this is my first degree, I can change after that. So something happened actually when I was in school. I started enjoying education and something happened. I had a male classmate of mine who, we were writing a paper for one of the courses. And, he saw how determined I was and how hard I was working. And he basically said to me, why is it that you bother yourself so much with all this school? When in the end, you will just get married and your husband will take care of you. And I was astonished because, according to him and in the culture that we had grown up in, for him, that was all that there was for women, young girls to aspire to, to be able to have a family and to be taken care of by a husband. So this incident really just continued to drive me toward wanting to make the change in the different social norms. And it was really no surprise to me that nearly a year after teaching post-college, I saw an opportunity to join the NGO sector with the Forum for African Women Educationalists, the Malawi chapter of that organization. So at this point, I literally had zero experience in project management. I had no network whatsoever in the NGO sector. All I had was the passion because the job was more in line towards improving girls' education. So I applied and I was blessed to get the job. I worked on different initiatives, but mainly on male engagement strategies, as well as women economic empowerment initiatives, in support of girls' education. So I remember an incident that happened that I recall in that area where there was a teacher who raped a student. And I quickly got in touch with the family, with the social sectors that were there in the area to ensure that they were aware, first of all, as the family, as well as the survivor of this violence, that they were aware of the different services that were available to them, be it the social, the health, the legal, and any support system that was available. And I was really happy to see that from there, that the family was able to take that on, not only to get medical support for the survivor, but also they went on through to get a legal support from the police and the justice system to the perpetrator of this violence. So really, at this point, I was not in the UN, but I was doing the similar work because it's really the same agenda that we're working on. So I knew at that point still that I wanted to work with the UN. I had been sending out a lot of applications to UN agencies within Malawi, but I never heard back from either of them, and I sent hundreds. So I continued to work, and soon after that, I wanted to study for my master's degree. And what was clear to me was that, I wanted to study abroad. However, I was looking specifically for a scholarship to be able to study abroad. So Malawi has a partnership with the Chinese government, and they were offering scholarships through the Ministry of Commerce and Finance to nationals of Malawi who have good academic achievement. So I applied 3 times in a row. First time, I never heard back. Second time, I never heard back from them. It was really the third time that I got called for interviews, and I heard the good news that they were going to sponsor me to study at China Women's University in Beijing. So I studied women's leadership and social development, which really, in essence, is what I had wanted to study all along. So through this program, I was really privileged to travel across China, meeting the different women-led organizations, learning about their strategies and their implementation approaches. I remember we also had a seminar by UN Women in China, where they also talked about their work in advancing gender equality and women's empowerment. And just having this interface with UN women personnel, it continued to drive me to say, this is the area where I feel I can contribute the most in, because I also realized that there's that interconnectedness coming in again of the different women's issues from within my own country, as well as those in other countries at a larger scale. So after I graduated, I joined the Dan Church Aid in my country, Malawi, where I also managed a program on ending child marriage and supporting young people with vocational skills development as an income source. And this initiative really had tremendous results. So I think it was shortly after this when I heard about the United Nations volunteers. So I heard about it from my sister-in-law. She gave me a brief of what it was, and I got excited. I looked it up online, read about it, and mostly it was an opportunity, which was not a staff position. I think I'll speak more on that as we go, but it was an opportunity to be formally engaged in the UN sort of as an entry point into the UN. So after that, I created my profile on the link that I found online, which is linked to the United Nations Volunteers Program. So it's a very easy to use platform. All you have to do is create your profile. And when I say profile, it's really basic information. For example, your education, your interest areas, if you have any work experience, and your references. Basically, sort of like a CV, which highlights which areas that you're interested in. And I say that it was a very easy to use platform because all you had to do after creating that profile was click on a apply button on the opportunities that you felt that you were interested in. And for this program, the UN volunteers, there are different methods that you can volunteer. Right now, you can even volunteer online. You can volunteer on site where the organization is, and this could be either at a national level or internationally, depending on what your preference is. So at national level, you could be a community volunteer. You could also volunteer whilst you're in college, a university volunteer. So you can be building up your experience even when you're in college. You can also volunteer as a youth. I think the age ends at 27 at this point and does not really require a lot of experience. I think it's 0 to 1 year of experience. You are able to be considered for those roles. For those with more experience, you can volunteer as a specialist, and this could be at national or international levels. This could be like at 5 years of experience. And moving further than that, you can also volunteer as an expert with 10 years more experience. So, just to give a brief of how this platform actually works, how this process works, is that UNV shortlists the profiles of candidates who have applied for a specific role, for a specific opportunity. And from there, they shortlist a pool of who they feel is best matching the requirements of that role. So they submit that pool to a recruiting agency that is looking to onboard a UN volunteer. So now it is now that agency that selects profiles from that pool and decides who to hold interviews with, whom they would like to hear more from. And the general interview format, which I found is, from my experience, has been the same standard, is that it's generally two stages. The first stage being a written test, which is based on the technical aspects of the job. So those that are successful from that written test are then called onto an oral competency-based interview. So when you're applying for the job, for the opportunity that you would like, I feel it's really a good idea, the best option to pay attention to the job description. So link your experiences, your interests, your skills to what it is that they are looking for. So just to highlight the major differences between these two, the test or the technical interview really assesses your knowledge on the subject area, be it you're applying for something in engineering, in health, in education, whatever your area is and the area that they are looking for. So the technical one is based on knowledge of that specific area. The second interview that I talked about is the competency-based interview. So this one really assesses behavior patterns. So mostly we talk about the different UN competencies, which those interviews are based on. So, a quick Google search, you're going to find it's mostly on communication, teamwork. You are looking at having integrity. You're looking at being creative. Are you resilient? Are you flexible? Do you adapt well to different changes? Because we're really in a dynamic space. So these questions, they are framed in a way whereby you are asked to highlight actual scenarios where you have displayed these competencies. So not theoretical or that form, but an actual lived experience where you displayed these competencies. It could be in a previous role or at school, just to really have an idea that if you have displayed, for example, resilience or communication before, you will be able to display the same behavior should they onboard you for that role. So that is really the whole essence of the competency-based interviews. So with the UNV platform, I applied for hundreds. I would tell you, if you look at my dashboard, I've applied for really a lot of opportunities, and it's really, how bad do you want it? How bad do you want to make the change? Apply as the opportunities really come through, if you feel it is best suited to your interest areas. So after a couple of months of being on this platform, I interviewed with an agency. Just give me a minute. I interviewed with an agency in Abuja, Nigeria. I was very blessed as well. I got the job and I was over the moon, super excited. But after 2 months of the onboarding process, because there's now a process after you're selected, which is standard really for most of the UN jobs. So after about 2 months of the onboarding process, the organization retracted the position. I was very disappointed, but really it didn't deter me from continuing to use the platform and continuing to apply for different opportunities. Really, how else would I have that stepping stone into what I was looking to be able to achieve? So I continued to apply, and after a year, through the same UN volunteers, I saw an opportunity with the Office of the Secretary General's Envoy on Youth in New York, where I applied. I went through that same process that I mentioned earlier, and I was blessed to get that job. I worked on mostly high-level advocacy, ensuring that young people are meaningfully engaged and included in the different processes of the UN. So I did that for 1 year. After I finalized that contract, still with the UNV, I was blessed again to get another opportunity. This was now as a specialist with the World Health Organization African Regional Office in Brazzaville, Congo. And I was there for about 6 months. So the posts have different durations in accordance to what the agency is looking for. And so here I also provided overall support to project management, tracking performance, and providing really overall support to implementation. I think, if you recall, I mentioned UNV to be a stepping stone into the United Nations. For me, I feel it was really a boost in my career. And I think it's also a great way to build your network, because you get to meet different people. Even though it is not a staff position per se, you still do the work. So great platform to build your network. So, after I'd been in the UNV for over a year and a half, I started looking into getting an actual staff position within the UN. So I remember closer to my contract end with the WHO, I applied for 3 opportunities with 3 different UN agencies. And something happened that really had never happened to me before, I guess, with UN agencies for staff positions. I heard back from all 3 organizations. I interviewed for all 3 positions, and I got all 3 jobs. I was selected for all the 3 jobs. And it was really up to me now to decide which agency, which job I felt would be best suited with my interest areas for me to be able to make that difference. So I really went from never hearing back from agencies after really hundreds of applications to getting 3 job offers at the same time with different UN agencies. And I felt so very blessed to be able to have that. So from those, I chose to join the United Nations Population Fund, which is the UNFPA, on a staff position. So the procedure, even for the staff position, it was really the same, going through the technical and then the competency-based interview. So now, why I chose now to be working with the UN, with UNFPA specifically, it was because of the mandate of the agency, because that also stipulates on the work that you're going to be doing. And for me, I thought UNFPA was a good fit with my interest areas. So I cannot really stress enough how important it is for you to be able to research the mandate and the priority areas of the different agencies that you're looking to work with. Because I will tell you right now, serving in the United Nations, it's passion. You need to have passion for what it is that you're doing. So it's very important to make sure your interest areas are aligned with the organizational interest areas. In that way, you are more effective and you really have fun when you're doing your job. So UNFPA, it's the agency for reproductive health, and our headquarters is in New York. I'm sure that you're aware mostly that the different UN country teams, the different agencies that are there at country level are aligning or have aligned to the priorities of the different countries that they're working in. And this is really in line with the principles of the Paris Declaration of Alignment and Harmonization with Government Systems, which really ensures that the different governments own the programs, which also feeds into sustainability of those programs. And it also looks at having that mutual accountability for the results that are coming out from that programming. So in Malawi, for example, the work of the UNFPA is aligned to the Malawi Growth and Development Strategy. And the focus areas, which also are aligned to the strategy I've just talked about, are mostly on youth programs, sexual and reproductive health and rights, gender, as well as population and development. So really all the programming that is done really branches off in this STEM, that it is those thematic areas that really inform the programs that are coming up at country level, which is really the same for the project that I am working on, which really is mainly a youth program, but also has cross-cutting areas in education as well as in gender. So one of the areas that I currently work on is on male engagement. And, you know, I'd really like to stress also the importance of male engagement, ensuring that young men and boys and men, they're involved in the conversations as we're striving to have gender equality. I feel male engagement is really an approach to gender equality that engages, it engages men, it engages boys. It's mainly through advocacy, through awareness, you know, to actively support the shift in the social norms that are there at a community, which in the long run is expected to change the behaviors and break the gender stereotypes that prevent women, girls, to really participate in the productive roles, and which prevents them from really reaching their full potential. So this approach also really goes into breaking or tackling rather the power dynamics that are there, where now the men are also actively engaged in redistributing the power, so that, you know, women are engaged at different levels, not just in the reproductive roles, but also in the productive roles. So, you know, this is a methodology that frames gender equality in a way that men and boys have ownership. They see the gains of having that inclusive society in order to drive change that also in turn benefits them. So practically, I have seen this working, for example, in ending child marriage at community level. There are different bylaws that are there to really, which really stem from the policies at the national level. And in this case, we have the policy, for example, in Malawi, which states that, you know, marriage of anyone under 18 is illegal. And so the bylaws that are at that community level are stemmed from this. But you'll find that sometimes this is not instilled at the community level, and that it's still happening, and nothing happens about it. But, you know, I've seen that engaging young men, engaging, you know, boys, men in the conversation, you know, to talk about how it is a human rights violation, how it impacts the different girls, you know, the health consequences that are there, the social consequences that are there that also affect them. From this, you know, I was able to see a greater impact where these bylaws are now being enforced by the men, even where previously, when we were not engaging men and boys, they felt excluded from that initiative. And it will always be, it's a women's issue, you know, they're having women's discussion, when this is not a women's issue, you know, it is an issue for everybody. So engaging the different parties in this conversation has greater gains in the different initiatives that we're working with. I've also seen the same in women economic empowerment initiatives, where initially there would only be the man, for example, who is the breadwinner of the different households. Now, engaging, the men in that conversation, the boys in that conversation, to talk about, having multiple streams of income per household, and how that increases really the livelihood, improves the livelihood of that household. It has also had those gains where you're seeing that redistribution, that now even men are more welcoming to ensure that girls are able to access education, ensuring that women are able to access economic opportunities, to ensure that the livelihood now of everybody is improved. So just to highlight there a little about some of the things that I work on. I think Esma, you also asked me to speak about which UN positions have diplomatic immunity attached, and what the different privileges staff are entitled to. So in terms of immunity, there are different categories of immunity, and this is really just broadly and generally speaking. Immunity falls under 3 categories, and this is in accordance to the UN Charter. So first of all, the UN body itself, the organization itself, it has immunity, which means that the body, the organization itself, cannot be taken to court by any country. None of the agencies, the entities of the UN can be taken to court. The second one is really on the highest level of people working in the UN entities, mostly those that have the same status, more or less the same status as diplomats. They technically cannot be charged with most civil offenses. The third type of functional immunity, the third type is functional immunity. And by this, I mean that the vast majority of UN personnel, we have functional immunity. So this means that we have immunity, but only as it regards to our function. So we cannot be taken to court based on the things that we have said and done as it relates to our duty as part of doing our work. So, however, really this immunity, it can be waived as it's not really intended to shield the UN or its personnel from responsibility for different actions, nor to shield perpetrators of different crimes. So that immunity is there, but it is mostly functional immunity, so that it enables us to best do our job. The last area I think that she asked me to speak on is on the retirement insurance of staff. So I think maybe as you would have noticed from my presentation, there are really different ways to formally engage with the United Nations. Generally speaking, there are different categories, and within each category, there are different levels, which really reflects increasing levels of responsibilities and requirements. So broadly speaking, there are professional staff, who are mostly referred to as being on the P level, which usually ranges from P1 to P6. It could also vary depending on the different agency. We also have the director level, D1 and D2. And these two categories really are mostly internationally recruited. There are also nationally recruited posts, which are the general service staff. It's mostly administrative and secretarial work, which mostly ranges from G1 to G7. And there are also the national professional officers, which mostly ranges from NOA, so NO National Officer A, to NOD. And even in these different categories, there are those different levels. And these last two that I've mentioned are generally nationally recruited. So the professional staff, which I mentioned, is internationally recruited, and the national professional officers, the role of these is the same. They do the same job, and they're both considered as staff. The only difference is that P level is internationally recruited and NO level is nationally recruited. And so in terms of requirements for entry, the lower level usually has the minimal requirements, 1 year of experience most of the time. So mostly like the P1, the NOA, or the general service one. These would mostly be the entry level positions, but also the details for each requirement are always usually broadly aligned in the job description or the posting of the vacancy. And so only these categories that I have mentioned here are what are considered as UN staff. So there are also other kinds of employment opportunities within the UN, which are not necessarily staff positions, but they are roles that support the work of the United Nations across the globe. So the positions here are usually the temporary appointments. They're the consultants, the UN volunteers, which I was initially in, the junior professional officers, and the service contracts. So all of these are paid positions, I think, except the internships. And also just to highlight that there's really no guarantee of being absorbed as a UN staff, after engaging in a non-staff position. So now in terms to your question on, what are those retirement benefits and so forth, it is only the category of staff, generally speaking. From my experience, it is really only that category that is considered as staff that are entitled to staff benefits. So for example, retirement insurance, it is there, but it is also dependent on the agency. It is dependent on what category you're on. It is dependent on what level you're on. So all the staff are entitled to it, but it is different depending on what category and what role you're performing. So also just going further to that, staff are also entitled to medical insurance, and we're also entitled to support for dependents, for example, whether there's a spouse and children. Generally, there's that provision for them. And if you check the UN careers, all the positions really that are open are available. All these, whether it's staff or non-staff positions, UN careers usually lists all of these positions and in the different countries. So if you want to apply, for example, at a regional level or international level, all nationalities are eligible to apply. And I think you also notice the different types of appointments, where we mostly have temporary appointments, which don't go beyond a year mostly. We have the fixed term appointments, which is what I am currently on, and it is renewed after a year mostly. Some have it for 2 years, then it is renewed, depending on whether the individual wants to continue as well as the organization wants to continue. There are also individual contracts and continuing appointments, where really nationals and internationals both are eligible to apply. It is only for service contracts that only a national is eligible to apply. So in my personal view, I think it is the staff positions that a lot of people are looking to be able to attain, whether at national level or at international level, and mostly as well on the fixed term appointments. So, just some thoughts, I guess, from my side for the international roles, be it whether it's in Geneva, it's in Paris or New York. I feel it's quite important to have a broad understanding or a tangible experience to the priorities of those specific countries that you'll be that your work is going to affect, because I think you can to affect the different communities when you understand the needs of the people in that community and in their diversity. So I think that's really my journey. I hope you've seen, I heard Ramiz mention that this is your 10th session. So I hope you've seen that, different people have different pathways into the United Nations. There's no one standard way to get there. So, be opportunistic. When the opportunity arises, go for it, have fun, see the world, and, build your network and your career as you go. So I think this is what I thought of sharing today. I will be handing it back to you, Esma, and also happy to answer any questions. If it's not really in my area of expertise, I will be happy to source the information from my colleagues. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Wanangwa, for this inspiring talk. I mean, what you have mentioned, the way from submitting hundreds of applications without response to actually getting 3 job offers at a time, it's an impressive way, and congratulations and good luck with your future endeavors. First of all, and what you have mentioned about the importance of study abroad and the importance of exchange. Myself doing an exchange program in past. I remember how my host mother always said to me in the US that the biggest privilege and the biggest achievement is when you have choices, when you have options too. And it was so good that you had your options. I will just want to ask about you. You mentioned the child marriage and the legal prohibition, but still that it happens in practice. I'm wondering if engagement is happening, because what I'm seeing in Georgia, unfortunately, a lot, and what the civil society is speaking here about, is that many times the families engage girls when they are below 18, so that once they hit this age, once they hit the adulthood, they would be married immediately to this person whom they were engaged to. So is this, I mean, people trying to sort of go around the rules?
Thank you,
That's
Esma.
my personal question.
That's a very critical question. It's a brilliant question. I think there are different approaches that we're using to tackle child marriage. I think one of them that I mentioned is on economic empowerment, because looking at the different causes of child marriage, why is it that we're having them? We need to go to the root causes in order to better inform us on what strategies are going to work. So you've mentioned a very important aspect that, they're just waiting basically for for young girls to reach 18, and then they're taken off to marriage. I think this is also something that has been viewed as a challenge, because most times it is that families are looking to get economic favors from, for example, from the man that is looking to marry their daughter. So the different types of initiatives that we're using to address this is not only on the economic empowerment, for example, of the families and the communities, but we're also looking to build the agency of the young girls, of the young boys, because child marriage sometimes even happens to young boys. So I found that building their agency is very important, because they are then aware that they have choice. They can make the decision. You empower them with education, economic opportunities. They're able to stand up and be in productive roles, whether it's at community level. They're able to have those leadership positions, for them to know that they have the agency to inform the different decisions that are happening in their lives, and that if they're being forced into something, there are the different sectors or the different duty bearers that they can reach out to that are available in the communities. And from this, they're able to make that conscious decision to say, maybe this is not the direction that they're looking to go, even though maybe the family itself is forcing for that person to go that direction. So we've packaged it in a way that, we're living in a community. There are other different agents working in the community whom have the duty, have the responsibility to say when they have seen that, for example, this is happening, or someone is being forced out of their will into a child marriage, there's a reporting pathway that they can upscale that issue into, and also ensuring that they are all aware that there's some legal implications towards it. So, not only looking at having a conducive environment that they're living in, but also ensuring that the young people themselves, the young girls, the young boys, have that agency to be able to make different decisions as they see fit for their lives.
Thank you very much for this answer. We have a few questions that I was reading through from the registration forms, and one was about what programs are there in the UN that work on adolescent resilience? Another one was about how difficult it is for someone from Africa to make the way to the UN. And the third one, I will ask you later.
Okay. You talked about what programs in the UN
that foster resilience of adolescents.
Okay. I think, thank you so much for that question. As you have seen, even from my explanation, the UN is broad. There are different agencies that are working on different mandates within the UN. So there are a wide range of programs that are working on resilience of adolescents. But what I can highlight, so I cannot list really off the top of my head all the programs, and it's also going to be that different entities and different agencies have different programs. But most of the programs really are on advocacy, they're on inclusion, they're on education, they're on sexual and reproductive health. So this will be different depending on the mandates of the different UN agencies. But something that I want to highlight in this regard is the work of the UN Secretary General's Youth Envoy, Ms. Jayathma Wickramanayake, and which I had the privilege of working with. So through the work of the Office of the UN Youth Envoy, there's a UN youth strategy. It's called the Youth 2030. So this strategy really outlines how the UN system and even beyond can best mainstream youth inclusion, youth engagement, the resilience into the different mandates of the agencies. So it could be a good tool to look up on. And also, just looking through some of the ways that the different agencies have internalized this youth agenda, the Youth 2030. But it is really
For example, how does the UNFPA work with adolescents?
What?
How does the UNFPA work with adolescents, for instance?
So specifically on UNFPA, we have several programs. We have the Action for Teen Mothers and Adolescent Girls. We have the Safeguarding Young People, and we have the UN Joint Program on Girls' Education. So these are based on the priority areas of Malawi. And how we work with young people is ensuring that they're able to access sexual and reproductive health and rights. So this is looking at service provision, ensuring that, for example, they're able to access different contraceptives as they wish, and also ensuring that they have the access to education. And this access is really through provision of bursaries, for example, for schools, ensuring that they have the different necessities that young people would need to be able to complete their education, and also building really their empowerment, their confidence through public speaking, ensuring that they have that agency to make their decisions. So this will really vary across countries and across agencies.
Yeah, now we have a few more questions. One was you mentioned briefly, but still maybe you can specify on the amount of on the age of UN volunteers. So what is the age limit for different UN volunteers category? Also, how hard it is for someone from Africa to make it to the UN, or if there are any quotas or anything. Also, somebody asked about how one can be involved in the national, like country level offices, but I think you have mentioned that.
Thank you so much for those questions. I'll first tackle the one that is talking about the different age categories within UNV. It is, I mentioned, I think, all the categories that we've got the community volunteers. So whichever community you're living in your specific country, should there be that opening? Broadly speaking, it does not really have that age limit. And, the experience is also minimal experiences required for that. So moving forward to the university volunteer, this I would cap it in the same category as the youth, that it is currently capped at 27, where you can volunteer as a youth. And also that the requirements for you to be able to volunteer as a youth or a university volunteer, the requirements are very minimum. Even without any experience, with just probably some passion in that area, you can be able to volunteer. Now, going further now to the specialist and the expert, it is really mostly based on the number of years of experience. So for the specialist, there's not really an age attached to it, as well as the expert, but rather for the specialist, you need to have a minimum of 5 years of experience. And for the expert, a minimum really of 10 years. of
Thank you,
experience.
Wanangwa. We are a bit short of time, so I want to ask you about the last question was what are what were the challenges already when you were at the UN? If you have encountered any challenges on your path, like career path, and also if and how do you balance your work and life if it's hard at the UN to balance?
That's a very good question. Let's see, some of the challenges that I've encountered. I think now we've seen that youth are more dynamic. We're in the largest number of youth to have really access to, for example, internet. We're now infiltrating even into the workspace, and this is something that I feel personally is we're in a new space. So I think this also goes into maybe some of the work that I've said the UN Youth Envoy is working on, ensuring that there's that inclusion of young people in the different organizations. So for me, I would say sometimes a challenge, though, as we have seen even with the Secretary General, there's a mandate to ensure that he's fully supporting youth inclusion. But now a challenge that I think I've seen is seeing that practically, ensuring that young people are not seen as tokens, but rather really as that we have something tangible to contribute. So a challenge I would say I've seen in sometimes would be that sometimes young people are being included as tokens to just say, okay, we included a young person, we're reaching those quotas or those requirements that a young person should be on a decision-making level. But I think we're on the right track. And we're moving really to not only have them in the room for the sake of having them in the room, but rather also to hear them and to know that they have something tangible to bring in. So there's all that discussion about intergenerational leadership, that we have that institutional memory, but that we also have young people bringing in innovation and new ways of looking at achieving our goals. And on the balance, yeah, brilliant question. It took me a minute, to be honest, to be able to balance my work as well as my personal life. It's very important for me, as well as for the UN, that we really have that work-life balance. I think there's a lot of work to be done. Truly, there's a lot of work to be done. But I think at individual level, it's important that you prioritize and you have that set time that, this is the time that I'm setting up to achieve my goals at work. And then this is the time I'm setting up maybe for family or for personal things. There's a lot of work, very important to prioritize and make sure that the different areas in your life are not neglected. And thank you, Esma.
Thank you for the answers. I would like to ask now everyone, we have still 15 minutes, so I would ask everyone to unmute your microphones and ask questions or make any concluding comments that you may have. If not, I want to really quickly ask, what is your status in the UN in terms of professional level and like position? You mentioned that there are professional staff, there is local national officers. So what is your status and level?
I'm currently a professional staff on fixed term appointment at the national level.
Thank you. Are there any questions to Wanangwa?
Yes, I'm typing a question in the chat.
Okay. Oh, you can ask it verbally. I mean,
Are there positions that UN agencies in different countries announce internally and that are not announced externally?
Thank you, Ramiz, for that question. In my experience, I've mentioned the UN careers portal, which for me, of course, they are like the different agencies that post the different opportunities that are available. For example, UNFPA has their own website where we advertised. World Health Organization has the same. UNDP, United Nations Development Program, UN Women. But now the UN careers really just consolidates all of that so that you have all the information of the opportunities like on one portal. So regarding to your question on whether there are others that are not given out externally, in my experience, all the positions are advertised, but it's very important to look at the details that are there, that are indicated in job postings. Sometimes you will see a job posting written internal. So it's there on the platform, but really if it's internal, then it's regarding, it's looking really to source within. Most likely they had an assessment and they've seen that the expertise that they're looking for, maybe there are other existing staff that already fit that profile, or it could be for different reasons, but it is always indicated whether a position is internal or whether it's external. So if it's external, then it is really open to even others that are not within that organization or agency to be able to apply. So it's all in those details that they put in the job listing.
maybe someone else also wants to ask the question before we summarize. Meanwhile, I will share Wanangwa's biography in the chat.
I would like to thank Wanangwa and the whole network for this great opportunity to allow you to share your story, because as young people from different networks, we do need to connect. And sometimes when we apply for opportunities or internships, we struck down with the level of requirements. So my question to you, is this like an age barrier? For example, in many networks, the development programs is related from 18 to 25 or 25 to 35. Is there like a limit for the age of anticipation, especially for young people? This is question number one. Question number two, is there a kind of restriction toward nationalities and or toward development programs? This is my second question.
Thank you very much, Asim. I had a sort of network buffer. So for the second question, I'm going to ask you to repeat. I think for the first question, correct me if I'm wrong, you talked about the age, for example, for internships that is there. You know, looking at the different categories, I feel it's best to look at it in the broader, sort of the broader categories that, for example, other jobs will look for, other internships will look for someone who's in graduate school. And others, as you've rightly mentioned, will look at someone whose age maybe is only up to 25 or 27. But I think we need to look at it in a positive aspect to say, maybe I do not fit in these qualities or these requirements, but there are other opportunities where I feel best suited to fill. And now I'm talking from really my personal experience, where I also had, for example, faced those challenges, where I even felt that sometimes, like prior even to my work with the UN, that maybe my experience or my age was a barrier. But now I looked at what are the other ways really that I can be able to still engage. And for me, I felt the UN volunteers was that best stepping stone, which if you really saw through my discussion, I had zero UN experience prior to that. I was already, I think, 26 or so when I was starting with the UN volunteers. So sometimes it happens that our profile is not exactly what an agency is looking for, but let's broaden out the opportunities that are available through the different platforms. We might not exactly start off as a staff, but we can start off in really other support roles and use that to propel you into the specific role that you're looking to occupy. For your second question, I missed it because I had a network buffer. If you could just repeat it. Thank you.
Yes,
about
because it was
it's
technical.
about okay. It's about if there's any kind of restrictions toward nationalities, because some programs are really not just entitled for the nationalities, but for the whole region. So is there like any restriction toward nationalities for development programs with the UN?
In my knowledge, there are different opportunities that are available for different nationalities. I also shared that, for example, the national professionals, the general service, those are available, those are locally recruited. For the P level, for example, they're open to any nationality, as long as you are not a national of that same country. Because if you're, for example, I am Malawian, if I'm applying for a job in Malawi, I can only apply for the national profession. I cannot apply for international professional for a job within my country. And even I think I mentioned for the regional and the international, for the headquarter sort of positions, they're really open to different, to all and different nationalities. So it just depends on, I guess, what the organization is looking for. If it's a local recruitment, then it's a local recruitment. But international recruitments are really open to any other nationals which are not of the same country.
Thank you, Wanangwa, once again for all your answers, for your time today. Thanks to all participants for your engagement and your questions, for attending us on the weekend day. I would wish everyone good luck, and especially you, because you have gone a long way, and congratulations and good luck on your future endeavors. And for everyone else, I would like to say goodbye and hope to see you again at our meetings that will follow. And please follow our Facebook page, where you will learn about the upcoming events. And also please consult, there were many questions that we discussed today, but also for those who were not attending, you always can watch our videos later on our Facebook page, where our speakers speak about these issues and cover these issues, things like how to become a general staff member, how to apply, what kind of CV should we create, and on which platform, and so on. So please look through our content on the Facebook page. Thank you very much, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.